no gold is not enough.
Hey guys, welcome back to Comic Quirks with Jimmy. First video in a while, and guess who I'm friends with? You know, he is kind of my friend, so I want to tell you guys I'm friends with one of the coolest guys in the world. His name's Skipntosh. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing great. We haven't been able to do this before. We spend all this time together, like behind the scenes. People don't know, or they kind of know. They're talking. People are talking, Jimmy. People are talking.
It better
and
be.
Now it's out in the open. Me and Jimmy are friends, and we're reviewing a comic book together. Yay.
Yes, and it's by your favorite writer, probably in the game today, if I'm not mistaken.
That'd be Jonathan Hickman, my friend. This guy's got a little while to go.
Hold on.
He catches up to the Hickmeister.
But what is Hickman doing that's still up there?
Currently, what is Hickman doing that's still up there?
He's only got one book. I'm guessing Decorum that's still up there.
Yes, technically, but also the third volume of Black Monday Murders has not come out yet. We're just waiting for Tim Coker to finish up that art. So
I don't think it's going to come out for a while, dude.
We can always hope, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Hey, all hope lies in doom, Jimmy. That's a reference.
Winter is coming, and we're not getting anything from Hickman or George R. Martin in a while. You know what's funny? Speaking of that, I had a dream. This is a messed up dream. I had a dream last night that George R. Martin passed away, and we would never finish the series of Game of Thrones.
That's not a dream, Jimmy. That's a nightmare.
That is a nightmare. Just Jon Snow bleeding to death forever. Oh, that's sad. Okay.
Jeez.
But the book we're talking about is by W. Maxwell Prince, and it's 1 week in a library. Oh, in the library. My bad. And this book is one of the coolest books I've read in a few months. It is meta on meta on meta, while also being very self-indulgent, and I appreciated that quite a bit. What about you, man? What do you think about the book starting off?
Yeah, my first initial impressions is I love how I really enjoyed it. From the tropes that were used on down to the original twists and turns that it had, and then really ultimately how vulnerable ultimately the book was. Those are the things that I enjoyed upon my first reading of 1 week in the library, and then we read it together, and it made it even better.
Oh, I'm blushing, dude. I'm blushing.
You literally are. Or actually, some of that might be the sunburn that you got.
I've got a huge sunburn this past few days, and it's messed me up with sickness, illness. Like I feel sick after every time I get a sunburn. I just feel sick. I don't know if anyone else gets that, but I definitely do. No? Do you?
Nope.
No? Okay, I'm alone. Cool. So let's get into the book. Would you like to start with? These are split up into days, obviously, because it's 1 week. Would you want to start with Thursday, the first day that starts with the book?
Absolutely. And even before we jump into Thursday, because it does start on Thursday, but what's interesting is since he's starting on a day and didn't have like a separate introduction, he kind of has to use Thursday as the introduction. And I really appreciate that it jumps straight into the center of the library. The librarian is laying down, surrounded by books. And I quote, "On Thursday, a book makes itself known to me in a dream." So he goes through this sequence of how this book came about, how it made itself known to him, how he began to read it. And then as he goes deeper into the story, that's where the first story on Thursday truly begins. So a little bit of what would be the intro to the book doesn't happen separately and then they go into Thursday. It happens within Thursday. I really liked this one. This one really spoke to me. It's a story within a book, the book of Thursday, about a father, and he's pulled out his eyes. I quote, "They show a man who's gouged out his own eyes with his thumbs so as not to read certain passages from a book of children's stories." And so you're like, Kurt, that speaks to you? You planning on gouging out your eyes, dog, like WWE style? No.
We can only
We can only, instead of eat your heart out, dig your eyes out. But
Yeah.
it has him and it has his two daughters, and a few things spoke to me about it. One was how he says he gouged them out because the stories almost kind of haunt him, and he didn't do it because he didn't like the books. He loves the books and he wants to read all of them, and he has come to the conclusion and the realization that he can't read all of them, and how the books reflect a little bit of life and then vice versa. And he talked about how beautiful some of the things that happen in the book are like life, but how also things can be equally bad, and how his daughters, who he loved dearly, which are kind of like playing, like doing the ring around the posy dance around him, how something tragic and terrible could happen to them equally as something wonderful and beautiful. So that really spoke to me as a father. I've had those like bad dreams or terrible thoughts just out of nowhere, just stupid thoughts like, oh, this could happen to my daughter, or that could happen to
100%
my
agree,
kids.
man. But I gotta correct you on one thing. It's ringing around the rosy, and you said posy. The pockets are full of posies. Just so you know, okay? Because I thought we all knew that, but apparently you didn't. So gotta educate.
Well,
Skip there.
sorry, Jimmy. Thank you for the correction, but at the same time, I don't do dances that are about the bubonic plague. So,
Well,
excuse
we
me if
all
I'm a little
have our
rusty.
faults, and that's yours. I mean, I still do it. I think I'm not the only one. So, and also
All right,
like
John
it's
Lennon.
I also I thought this was a cool book because I mean this section Thursday, because it said equally as bad, and he didn't want to see his like children grow up with this equally opposite sort of thing, while also telling them and reading them the story and seeing how it affects them, which kind of reminded me of William Blake. I don't know if you know him, but he wrote a poem called "The Tiger and the Lamb," and it's all about innocence and what causes where is the transition from innocence to divulging into this opposite sin, like the predator, the tiger. And it was kind of like we should try to keep them as innocent as possible until there is no other way to stop them from just going out into the world. And so that's what it kind of reminded me about. And I was like, not many people know that, but it kind of felt like, well, Maxwell Prince is just too smart to not realize that dichotomy. So that's what I got out of Thursday.
I like that. Thank you. It's a good point.
Friday. This is Pinocchio. We get to see Pinocchio. It starts out with Friday, and it says what does it say? The library has sprung a leak.
Yep. On Friday, the library springs a leak.
And he's surfing on a giant novel.
What
This
else?
is awesome.
You're right. Just the imagery alone of it was so cool. So along with the imagery, what are some things that jumped out to you about Friday?
Friday, not just the imagery. I thought it was the meaning behind it with Pinocchio. Like we were talking beforehand, I was like, I didn't really understand it, and then you kind of helped me figure it out along the way. And this is when I went back in to take notes on it. I kind of figured out the meaning, and because the story is so personal to the author, I thought the author was trying to tell us that when we think something is just really beautiful, but others will just tear it to shreds, leaving us like more broken than before. Even when there's like this mob mentality saying the total opposite of what you believe, you should still kind of stand up for what you believe and be brave and say what you believe to be true. That's what I kind of got this story from Pinocchio, because he met this other not doll, sorry people, this other puppet who is the most beautiful puppet he's ever seen. But then this mob was like, okay, that's cool, we're gonna rip her to shreds and tear her piece for piece and then sell her. And I was just like, oh dear God. And then at the end, Pinocchio kind of talks about, I should have been brave and stopped them. And it kind of all fit together. And it was a really dark take on Pinocchio. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Miss Marionette was the puppet's name, and yeah, that whole thing about Pinocchio, and like we talked about being a story of like validation. He's very different, but he is real, and people only accept him and see him in one light as something that is less than serious. And then for him to hope that people accept him for who he is ultimately, but he wanted to be a real boy because he thought that people never would accept him for who he was. And then to bring that around to this side, but turn it on its ear, he's in a world where people do accept him for who he is, and who he is to them is lesser than. He's of a lower class. Even the wood, they talk about the wood that he's made out of. They want to get Miss Marionette because she can sing, she's popular, and the quality of material she's made out of is worth more on the black market. Whereas Pinocchio, they're like, the only way you would be worth anything to us is if you helped us acquire her, because you're worthless, more or less. In that, this time around, his validation would have been for him making a stand and standing up against them, versus him looking for validation from them because they already validated that he was less than. So I liked it. I like how it turned it on its ear, and I like that in the end, he kind of accepted the fact even that he wouldn't have stood up like he should have, but he wouldn't have, and then he begins to dissipate. And it's funny, the only true point of hope that he had in the whole story was when he was outside of the book with the librarian, having that conversation with the librarian outside of it.
Yeah. So now we're on to Saturday.
My favorite story, I believe.
This one was mine as well. This one was very mine as well. Because the master writing for someone to make us, for the simplest meaning in the whole book is this one short story, yet the meaning is just so simple. But to get there, he had to do this master writing work to build it. I don't know if I'm selling it so well. So it starts off with the librarian eating porridge with the Goldilocks and the three bears, but he is the Goldilocks character, and he's being circled by the three bears. And I see that as sort of like difference in taste. Mm-hmm. And you can't really, you get, in this case with Goldilocks, you get to choose which one was your which one was the one that fits you best, and you're being circled by all the other ones. But then he reads a book, and which the book was actually in the porridge. And when he starts reading this book, it was about this lady going through depression, sort of having a one-night stand with her friend, and that's all there is. And then her friend commits suicide, and it kind of just ends abruptly in this short story. And I see it as sometimes you can't look too far into it and just take things as they are. Because otherwise you wouldn't have that Goldilocks in the middle. If there was only one bowl, which there was, while still being circled by the three bears with their three different choices, sometimes you have to settle for that one bowl then. So take that as it is. While the story ends abruptly without an ending, which is kind of meta, we'll talk about later. It's sort of like you're gonna take this how it is, if you don't like it or not, and just leave it. After that, just leave it. Otherwise, there's no point. Just leave it. And it's so meta because that relates to the end of the book, which we'll talk about later. Which means I can't really talk about it right now.
I know. I want to jump straight to it and talk about it too because of how meta it was, and not just because it's meta. Because we hear the word meta, and for some, it's funny. I remember for so long people. Like there was a period of time where people were talking about meta and it had positive connotations, and now more and more recently I've heard people talk about things being meta with negative connotations. But with this, to me, it was just art imitating life, imitating art, imitating life. My favorite part about the book, or about this day, Saturday, was a few things. One, there was minimal art, so it was more of like a manuscript. Yeah. That you read through, and there was some images within there. So a good use of a medium, kind of switching it up on us, not letting things get stagnant. which was cool. And then the other thing I liked is within the story, I personally still deal with this to this day. It was a lady talking about depression, and she was even going into like what it was like when she'd go see her therapist, all the different types of medications that she had to take, which some of them I was like, oh yeah, I've had to take that before too. And within it, the only thing that really truly gave her some internal peace within this story, and I'm not saying I relate to this, but I connected with it, is that she would have this vision of herself like being like a trapeze artist, and she'd be like walking the tightrope, and like she was at the circus, a place that we would say is a little kind of crazy and wild, but everybody was in their place. The ringleader, the clowns in their tiny car and all of that stuff. And because everything was in its place, things weren't out of place and overwhelming. Even though she was walking a tightrope, she just felt this calm, this solace, this serenity as she was up there doing it, and all the rest of the world and her real world and her waking life faded away. And I thought that was really cool. And then the last thing I'll share, what I thought was cool, is at the end of it, her name was Marigold, and the librarian is talking to himself, and he's like, oh, Marigold, what a lovely name. And he's holding a bottle of lithium, and lithium is one of my favorite Nirvana songs. So
That's what you had to say. That last part was what I'm confused on that last part.
Jimmy, like you said, take it for what it is, man.
Okay. Also, here's the thing. Did you look up the words? She would say words to herself, random words with definitions and set definitions and meanings, to calm herself down. Did you look up every word?
Not everyone. Most of them I knew, and the ones that I didn't were the ones that I looked up. So I didn't look up every word because most of them I knew.
Damn it. I was thinking like you were just like, you look up everything to find the definition of everything. So I thought you would look up every single one.
Some of them I already knew.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Sunday. It's all you, man.
Sunday. We jump over to Sunday. This was the accounting day, the day of numbers. As someone who I do not have a fantastic relationship with numbers, I thought this was very interesting. But what I did like about it, again, kind of switching things up and not allowing things to be stagnant, he used it, and he used some graphic design as well to really take the story to a whole nother level of being a graphic novel, employing more graphic design than we normally get.
Graphic design in a graphic novel. Who would have thought?
Who would have thunk it, Jimmy? Who'd have thunk it? But what I did like about it is this is the part of the day where you start to realize that the librarian, although at first, and I want to, this is a quote I meant to share earlier. It was one of the quotes in the beginning of the book. And it kind of set me off thinking a certain way about the librarian. I won't read both quotes, but I'll read the last one. Oh God, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space. One more time. Oh God, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space. Shakespeare from Hamlet. So in my mind, I was like, oh, I have so many comic books. We all usually have so many comic books. It's our stack that we're trying to catch up on so we're not behind. And I was like, oh yeah, if he's trapped in this place of all these books, he's got nothing but time to read all these stories. Like I want to have to read my stories. But this is the day of numbers, that we start to get an idea that the librarian may not want to be there as much as we thought.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to the definition where he talks about birth. Because nativity is the first one.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like a Jesus thing only. And I was so confused by that. And then it goes into 2, Genesis, which is beginning. Which is also the first chapter of the Bible. Yeah. And then 3, origin story. And I was like, God damn it, I was wrong. It's not Jesus. Our character's not Jesus.
Nope, not this one. And that was the other thing that I liked about the numbers. He started running like the probability that that he could come up with of how he might escape, and it was not looking highly probable that he would get out of there. And there was even like a little what do you call it? Jimmy, what do you call these things again? Where you're trying to escape. I used to do these as a kid all the time.
What do you mean?
You know, where you have like that little, the maze, like the little maze things where you got to draw the line either from the outside in to where it goes, or if you're a cheater, then you start from the outside and you start from the inside and then you work your way back out to find out what's the proper route. And you got to trace it with the pencil. I thought the little maze thing was a pretty cool use of numbers too, especially like, you know, back in school, how they would relate, especially like in, you know, geometry, how numbers would be related to some sort of graphical illustrated lines and your compass that you have to use. So again, pretty clever use of the numbers chapter. And of course there was some pi in there, which, you know, you can't do a chapter on numbers in a reading book without finding some use of pi. And then we get to Monday.
Now this one is a little more subtle. This one had no words in it except for kind of notation. You have birds chirping, but like they use musical notes. It's really just going through different stories, like famous children's stories, but we don't read it. We just watch. Because I thought this was kind of cool because it was like, instead of, I don't know how to express it, because it was like the author was like saying basically it was like, sometimes reading's not the answer. You're just gonna have to watch and see how it goes.
Absolutely. And so of course this one was a Charlotte's Web reference, because we had the birds and then the spider and the pig, as well as the old woman, the old lady, and her husband who was looking after her because she was deathly ill. But again, this story was a reminder to me of, like, I see this almost like an ill, and I think the content boom that we're in within this generation kind of adds to this. We are so inundated with content, and higher quality content than it's ever been for quite some time, that so often people are just looking for like, what's going to be the turn, what's going to be the twist, what's going to be the aha moment. And I feel like people in this generation, consumers, me being one, are always just looking for that big thing instead of enjoying the journey. And I can count so many, especially when I was really into films and I'd watch crap tons of indie films. There were so many films that dropped you in at a place that would not be a conventional start, and then let you off the ride at some place that would not be a conventional ending. And I still felt fulfilled because I spent so much time with this character going through these things, and I'm like, I connected with them on their journey, and this is just the place where we part. Just like in real life, we don't always meet people at their genesis, and we don't always, kind of leave them off at their end. You know, it happens whenever it happens, however it happens. That's an honest, story in history. So I really liked that take, and then of course them weaving in, pun intended, Charlotte's Web tropes.
But story. They didn't even tell us the typical children's stories.
Right.
Everything progressed, and it just kept getting darker. Like just a bird feeding its children a worm. And then instead of just like, oh, they ate it. No, it showed it in like this dark contextual way where it's more like contours and highlights, where it was just, you saw them rip apart this worm. And then the bird flies off. Oh, then he gets caught in the web. And then this is horrible. And then the spider comes from Charlotte's Web and feeds the bird to the pig.
Yep.
And then the pig goes out of the barn, and then his owner comes and cleavers his head off. And then he cooks the pig and makes bacon, takes it to his wife. Oh, and his wife's dead. Like, it's just a progression of just like shit gets worse and worse.
Yeah, kind of, like a little bit. And again, like, W. Maxwell Prince doing, what he does and the way that he tells his stories, that was just kind of how it progressed. But again, like above even the major beats, no words. So you really did go on a visual illustrated journey. Of course, John Amore, who did the lines, and then Catherine Leno, who did the colors. I think the graphic design as well. They take you on that trip. So for me, it was a really interesting journey because at first it wasn't so obvious where we started. And then more once we got towards the end, I was like, oh, okay, this is where we're at. And then when it took that turn, I was like, okay, this is where we end. And I did like how it started off with the fly outside of the book, went inside of the book, went away from the fly, and then came back to the fly at the end as it landed on the wife's head who was sick or passed away. And then bam, it's back to the librarian, like taking a whack at the fly to get back outside of the book and back to him. I thought that was cool.
I thought so too. And then now we're at Tuesday.
Tuesday, one of my favorite days of the week.
Before we get into this,
Sure.
though,
Please.
I gotta say, W. Maxwell Prince has sort of this darker side of realistic impossibilities to the point where it's like almost Douglas Adams satire. And like when you look at it, you're just like, this guy thinks of like the weirdest things. And we get that in this chapter. Especially with the theory, the methods of practical travel.
Yes. So
And then he starts to fly on his bed.
yes. Tuesday. On Tuesday, I perused the alcove of porous borders. So again, alluding to porous borders, big old pores, him trying to slip in between the cracks, him trying to get himself out of this library. So he's really, really, really illustrating how to do that now. And I think even some of the stories are having a little bit of an impact on it. That last story, it was heavy, and he might be like, you know what? Maybe these stories aren't as healthy for me as I think. And through that, we get a bunch of different tropes. Everything from Alice in the Wonderland. We got Morpheus, the Matrix here with the pill.
All I'm offering is the truth. Nothing more.
Nothing more. Gotta quote the man properly, right? And he says, I see it. A thing both strangely familiar and completely, utterly foreign. A border, a porous and yielding. A way out? One can hope. And it's just a normal, like, janitor closet door.
And that's cool because he says that things both strangely familiar and completely, utterly foreign. Because he's in this library where all he's reading are these, like, almost fantasy-esque, everything's grandiose, but seeing the ordinary is just foreign.
Completely. So he goes into it, of course, naturally, jumps right in, and we go to a black and white world of about as far away from these fantastical stories that we've been taken through in the library to like utterly just like plain Jane vanilla everyday life. They've even sucked the colors out of it. Jimmy, when he went into there, where did your mind start to take a turn?
My brain instantly went back to the Matrix. To this is what Keanu Reeves' character, I'm forgetting his name, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson.
Forgetting, I mean, this is what his character was before Morpheus. So I just went straight back to there and thinking, okay, if this is what if this is the lie before the truth, what's the truth? And I just had to get there. And I mean, we all knew this was fake, but come on, what's the journey?
What's the journey? That is the key question. And I think that was like my mind. It's funny. I didn't jump straight to that. I kind of actually went more to the Office Space route. When we got to this part, I was like, oh yeah. But within it, it was interesting because people started calling him a different name that he wasn't used to. And then we did start to get an idea because when he had to adjust his glasses or take his glasses off, that's when he saw things within the fantastical world. And then when he put his glasses back on, or excuse me, when he took his glasses off, that's when he saw the plain Jane vanilla world with no color. When he put his glasses on, that's when he started noticing that the color returned to the world, and the coworkers that he was with, they were all the different figures from all of those fantastical stories, Alice in the Wonderland and such. And it was at that point that he started to feel like he was going crazy. I think he started to believe, okay, this is my real world, and that other world is not the real world. And he wanted to take a different pill to kind of counteract it. One of his buddies was talking about like a pill that that he's been taking, and he was like, "Oh, give me that one." So they went to the bathroom for him to take it, and once he did, I think that's really when the journey, or he basically comes into realizing and accepting where he was, and he was like, okay, this is not the way out either. Like, I don't want this. Like, I was hoping that this door would be it. I'm researching the practical travel and the borders, porous borders and all that stuff, but this isn't it. So he just kind of nuts up, as me and Jimmy would talk about, hold your nuts.
Hold your
gird
nuts.
loins. Hold your nuts. He girded his loins.
As Jesus said.
Hold on, you're going to make me pull up the Omarosa gif.
I still can't believe that Jesus said.
ain't say that. But yes, and then he walks back through the door with a renewed confidence, and as he does, plop, drops himself right back into a bundle of books.
Here's the thing, though. Who is his friend?
Who is his friend?
Yeah, the one who gave him the pill.
Oh,
Morpheus.
Yes, that's right. It was ultimately Morpheus, Mr. Kastrovich. Yeah, it was Morpheus. There you go.
I was right. I just want to say that.
Hey, Jimmy was right all along. I thought it was going to be Lumbergh that gave him the pill from Office Space, but apparently I was wrong. It wasn't Lumbergh.
That would have been even better. You know, it'd be cool if like he handed him like a pill and said, "This will take care of a case of the Mondays."
But Jimmy, it's a Tuesday.
Exactly. It takes the pill and he wakes up to the truth. It's a Tuesday.
Jimmy, I think you're onto something. W. Maxwell Prince messed up by not inviting you as the person to co-write this book. Obviously.
I mean, he should have. Like, even though he's never heard of me before in his life, he doesn't know I exist. He still should have reached out.
Everybody knows Jimmy. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
On the Wednesday. Oh, and finally, Jimmy, your Jesus shows up. So there you go.
Oh, my guy.
Your guy.
I'll let you start with this one because I don't really want to get into that.
Cool. So here we are. It's Wednesday, and it starts with utter madness and chaos. Some stories that we're used to seeing, but in a completely different way. Anxiety Bots says, Zorp, blarp, frizz. And then the other one says, for once, I agree with you. What a blurpin' Wednesday. Usually incredulous Android 6 replies. And then, of course, we go to another one, and it's someone peeking in on Jesus. Oh, the apostle. Hey, Mr. Jesus, sir. The apostle says meekly, people are getting awful sick out there. Hush, acolyte. Messiah commands. I'm knee deep in this crossword. What's a 9-letter term for the fourth day of the week? Starts with the W. So, and that's like a is that a slow hand Jesus? Is that not
What?
Slow hand. I'm trying to think of his. Eric Clapton is not Eric Clapton Jesus. Eric Clapton Jesus. If you ever seen him, but essentially all the stories are out of whack now. We go from ones that we do know, ones that we don't know. I mean, that are not as common, and they're all saying a form of Wednesday. We even get my favorite panel personally out of this. We get some Wednesday Addams, Wednesday and Pugsley, because I'm a huge Addams Family fan.
That was your favorite? Oh,
far.
mine was the one right after that, the Gulliver's Travels.
Oh, that is a good one.
I love Jonathan Swift, so.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Of course, D-Day happened on a Wednesday, too, so that one kind of hit close to home. The airplanes dropping the bombs and all that stuff. But, yes, we get to Wednesday, and since the stories are getting out of whack, naturally, you know that the world outside of those books is freaking it's coming down on him, crumbling everywhere. Yep. Jimmy. What was your take on, how did you feel about Wednesday and the calamity that was Wednesday?
It reminded, I hate to like reference something that no one really cares about anymore, but it reminded me of an episode of Doctor Who called The Wedding of River Song, where everything started to happen all at once. All of time and space literally was happening at once. And this was just a good ride. It was a good ride. The references were on point, everything. But then we meet at the end of Wednesday. This is where I was telling you about how meta it was before. We meet the actual author of this book, W. Maxwell Prince. He self-inserts himself into the book to talk to his own characters and talk to him and tell him why he made the story and created him and why he can't leave the library.
I like this part though, but like even the way that it went into that was like it wasn't jarring. It was fairly smooth in my opinion. And he
Yeah.
says right here, "What on earth is happening to my home?" This is a librarian speaking. "To the escape pods, my fuzzy Wesleys flee." These little furry animals. And then as the librarian is looking over to it, off in the distance says, "Hey, bookman. Yeah, you. I know how to fix all this. I does. The answer's here in my guts. So what are you waiting for? Open me up. Talk to the you-know-who, the guy." I know who. "Sorry about all the commotion," he said. And I love like how still it's about the books. And he had to still go inside of a book in order to get it. And then once he went inside of the book, then we really got meta. I'm going to let you take it away here, Jimmy.
This is I don't even know where to start with this. He basically just enters the book, and the author, W. Maxwell Prince, he comes in and says, "Hey, Alan, sorry about all the commotion. That's just my way of trying to heighten things." Endings are hard, and he underlined that. This book is just so funny. Okay, he underlined that. It says, "I can write a million beginnings, but endings, oof. Who are you?" He says, "Oh, it's kind of embarrassing, but I guess I chose all this." And he gets into it. So once he starts talking to him, he starts to express it, to the librarian that he wrote this because he wanted people to think he's smart.
Mm-hmm.
And oh God, once he gets into it though, it's not like he's talking to the character anymore. It's like he's talking to us. And I didn't feel out of place or anything. I felt like he was literally just telling us how he felt about books, how he felt about his place in writing and everything. It was just like really heartfelt. But then it comes down to, you're not going to leave the library because you can't. You're not real. And there's no ending because I'm just going to leave it that way. And it just I'll reset everything. I'll make sure the library's safe, put it back together. But there's no ending.
So I want to jump in here. I want to say something for a second. The whole "I want people to think I'm smart" thing, if you like with not much more context, that can come off as arrogant. And especially with the success that W. Maxwell Prince is having right now with Ice Cream Man. But that's not the place that he was coming from. Earlier, when me and Jimmy said how it's a very vulnerable book, he was coming from a place of vulnerability. So I'll give a little more context. So he pulls the librarian in and he says, "Welcome to Brooklyn. Like in these stories, I wrote you, Alan, because I want people to think I'm smart." And then the librarian says, "Smart?" And he says, "It's true. I've got this. I'm afraid. No, I'm terrified of people thinking I'm dumb or dull, or even worse, averagely intelligent. I thought maybe that writing a comic about a library would give the reader the impression that I'm a bright guy, because the alternative, that I'm not, is so scary for me to contemplate. Hey, look, it's Ash Wednesday." Well, I'll leave that part there. But that's the Ash Wednesday. Shout out to Ash right now.
Yeah.
Ash on Comics, my buddy. We do a show together, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows about it. Tune in. But he was coming from a place of vulnerability. He feels that he's deathly terrified that people may think that he's not smart, that he's averagely intelligent or dull, which I have an appreciation that that's even a fear of his, because I feel like majority of or a healthy amount of writers these days within comics, I think maybe think that they have more confidence in that and think that they're better than they actually are. And then it turns into not always the best type of books, subpar books. But in this case, he's so afraid of it that he works harder to make sure that his books are that entertaining, that they are intellectually engaging, or that they are heartfelt, whether it's a positive or a negative side. So that side of W. Maxwell Prince, he wants people to think he's smart, not because he believes he's so smart, but because he has a terrible, terrifying feeling that people may think that he is the opposite, and he works harder in his books.
Think about the premise of this book besides the ending. What's it about? It's about a guy wanting to leave the library. The library is just a majority of imagine all the millions of books on a shelf right now. How many do you walk past? It's about a guy wanting to leave that And if you think about the meta, because it kind of is, it's about him wanting to stand out of the crowd in the library. To leave the library means you get checked out. That means people want to read you. It's all about working harder. This book is fucking smart.
It is. It's really smart. It's very creative too. Like the creativity that was in it, from the writing to I love how the panels and everything were rendered. The colors, the use of graphic design, the use of the days as chapters. Fantastic. Yeah, John Moore, fantastic work on this. I'm looking forward to Prince and Amore doing another book together because it's been awesome. But yeah, and even of course, you know, again, the last part of the book that I'll read, comics know it mostly by way of Grant Morrison from his final issue of Animal Man. Stan Lee played with it as well, and he's talking about the self-insertion trope, and of course, paying homage to Mr. Morrison. I got another Grant Morrison book today, actually, so I thought that was interesting. But it's very obvious that W. Maxwell Prince has an appreciation, a respect, and a love for stories as a whole, but particularly and especially comic books. And as much as Jimmy was right, this book was very much for him, but it was for us too. This is I almost read this like a guy turning in an application form, and he's saying, "Hey, I would like to take the job as your beloved writer, and this is how I'm going to audition for you. I am creative. I can incorporate all these different ways to be creative for you and put a book together really well for you. I can make it layered. I can make it textured. I can make it fantastic. I can make it realistic. And I can make it honest, and I can make it vulnerable. And if you would be so kind as to hire me, despite the fears that I have and some of the self-doubt that I have, I will work hard to overcome those to get you a book that is worthy of your money, but above that, worthy of your time, because time is priceless." That's how I read this book, and that's why it was so endearing to me.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with that, because this book, like, when the first W. Maxwell Prince book I was exposed to was Ice Cream Man. Although Skip truly adores that book with his whole heart, it didn't click with me. It wasn't my thing. But he goes, "Fine, read this book." You know, because I'm not going to get into that, but I was like, okay, sure, I'll read it. And then I read it, and I go, holy shit, this book is everything I love about just the art. This book isn't comics. Don't think of this as a comic book. Think of this as art, and then you'll get something a lot more out of it. That's what we got. That's what we came here to talk about. That's why we loved it. Anything you want to say, Skip, before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'll say this and the book that I think came after that. The first one I believe him and Martin Morazzo worked on, which is the Ice Cream Man creative team, was called The Electric Sublime. These two books are as far away from Ice Cream Man and Haha as I've seen his work get. Minus there's one other short story that I did buy from him. I didn't finish it. I think it's called The Pursuit of Beautiful Things. I didn't finish that yet, but I did purchase it. So maybe Jimmy and I will read that too, and maybe we'll review it for you later. But you get a lot of story, you get a lot of effort, and you get a lot of art for $9.99 USD. So I highly advise hit up your local comic shop, see if they can order it for you. If they can't, or if you're not close to a local comic book shop, because I know not everyone is, just go on Amazon or any of those other sites, order the book and read it and enjoy it, and come back to this video and let us know what your thoughts on it are. Or you can hit up I or Jimmy in a Discord server that we may be in, Thinking Critical or Ash on Comics, or hit us up on Twitter, and we would love to think what you guys thought. Jimmy, your final thoughts.
Yeah, I've already said my final thoughts. This is just art. But I'm pretty sure we're going to be doing a review on Electric Sublime, because he and I made a deal about something and something. So the deal was, if I read Electric Sublime and do a review with him on his channel, that he'd do a different video with me on my other passion project channel. By the way, it's called Crispy the Biggin, all one word. Check it out. It's where I talk about Doctor Who. And that's it. So at the end, we're done. See you guys later. Like, subscribe. If you like the video, make sure you like the video. If not, oh well, we had fun. See you guys later. Have a good one.
The end. I
guess.